Welcome to this latest edition in our video interview series here at iConnect. My name is Richard Albert, and along with Tom Ginsberg and David Landau, I'm a founding co-editor of this blog. Today's video interview series is called Five Questions that we ask to a scholar of public law. In this case, Ana Robalinho. Ana is a law clerk in the chambers of Justice Luis Roberto Barroso of the Brazilian Supreme Court. Ana holds degrees from the University of Brasilia, from the University of Sao Paulo, and from the Yale Law School, where she earned a master's in law. She's returning to Yale to earn her doctoral degree in law. Ana, thank you so much for agreeing to do this. It's good to see you.
Hello, Professor Albert. It's good to see you too.
Please call me Richard. Ana is calling me professor because I was her professor at the Yale Law School when I was a visiting professor there in 2015, 2016. We had two classes together. One of the great students in that building. Good to see you again.
Thank you very much, Professor.
So let's begin, Ana. What are you researching and writing right now when you have the time, of course, because you're very busy as a law clerk for Justice Barroso?
Well, right now I'm putting the finishing touches to an article on constitutional history, the constitutional history of Brazil, and how the Brazilian Supreme Court has dealt with comparing to very influential decisions made by the Brazilian Supreme Court, which were made virtually a year apart and which presented very, very different views on the history of the transition into democracy and constitutionalization in Brazil. This paper is the result of a wonderful conference I got to attend in Chicago last year, which was organized by Professor Jason Mazzone. And it will come out in as a chapter in a collected volume later this year. I have also recently written an article on the future of constitutionalism in Brazil, in Latin America, and in the world. The provisional title is Constitutionalism in 2030, which will serve as a starting point for a seminar I am co-teaching in the University of Brasilia, into which I have invited prominent scholars from Brazil to discuss the future of constitutionalism, and all of the papers presented in this seminar will also form a collective volume. And as you mentioned, I'm just starting the process of researching and writing my doctoral dissertation as well.
So you have your hands full.
Yes.
Now, given that you do have this very important role at the Brazilian Supreme Court, how and when are you finding the time to write? Do you have a routine that you built for yourself, or do you just write whenever the time appears?
Yeah, so I was never very good at forming a routine, but I was forced to commit to one in order to get academic writing done, especially in this past year, because I've been clerking in the court, which is a very rewarding but very demanding job, and it takes up a lot of my time. So right now, I usually write at night, often into the early hours of the morning. I wish I could say that this routine has transformed me into someone who works way ahead of deadlines, but actually deadlines are still fundamental in my writing process, and most of the writing gets done once the deadline approaches, and I dedicate all my focus to the process.
Now, when did you know, Ana, that you wanted to be a law professor?
So I knew I wanted to go to law school as a young child because my father is a lawyer, but I started working towards my degree thinking I would become a judge or a prosecutor. But in my second year in law school, I was introduced, so to speak, to the academic world. I had young professors who were enthusiastic about giving undergrads the opportunity to do academic research, to write, and to get published. And I was lucky enough to take part in study groups, scientific initiation programs, and so on, in which I got to do research and to write in public law. And it's been a fundamental part of my life since then. By then, I knew for sure that I wanted to be a law professor.
I think one of your early influences is a dear friend of iConnect in Brazil, Juliano Zaiden Benvindo, yes?
Exactly. Professor Juliano is actually, was a huge influence in that period of my life.
Oh, that's wonderful. He's such a dear friend to iConnect and to the Journal Icon and to the entire Icon-S family of programming. So Ana, let me ask you about your studies and about your research and writing in another way. Is there a book that you have read that has become just very meaningful to you, either because it's a very important point of reference for you in your own scholarship, because it showed you the possibilities of scholarship, or because it's kind of an anti-model of work, something that you don't want to follow? Is there a book that has been important to you in any of these ways or any other way?
I think there are two different pieces of scholarship that come to mind when you ask this question. The first is actually a paper. Way back when I had these opportunities I mentioned to write and research, working towards a bachelor degree in law, I first came across the work of Bruce Ackerman. And the first piece by Ackerman I ever read was The Living Constitution, a paper that was published in the Harvard Law Review back in 2007. That paper was just fundamental in introducing me to a way of thinking about law and about constitutional law that I had never encountered before, exposing me to the idea that history is a fundamental subject in theory and practice of constitutional law, which is still an idea that animates my scholarship today. So that's a very fundamental, a very influential piece of scholarship to me. In a similar context, I took part in a seminar a few years back in which we read a collective volume organized by Yale Law School professors Jack Balke and Reva Siegel. It's called The Constitution in 2020. It was written back in 2009. And that was influential not just because of the great scholarship that was in that book, but also the format. Very short, very powerful pieces that were written by some of the most influential scholars in the world, talking about how constitutionalism ought to develop. It was just immensely influential to me. On the one hand, by that point, I knew that my goal was to get into the Yale Law School and to learn from those scholars. And also this book and this experience is the reason, is the inspiration behind this project, which I mentioned earlier, that I'm working on now, a seminar taught in the University of Brasilia, in which we're thinking about the Constitution 10 years from now, once again in 2030.
Oh, very exciting. And how rewarding it must be for you to have read Bruce Ackerman's work in 2007, and then in 2015 to have been his master's student, and then now in 2020 to be enrolling in the Yale Law School once again as his doctoral student.
It's immensely rewarding. I've been very lucky in getting to meet Professor Ackerman and having him being interested in my work and in being really an advisor to me in so many ways.
Oh, wonderful. We're so happy for you. So, Anna, last question. I know you're very busy. You have to get back to Justice Barroso's work. Last question. You have written some stuff over the years, many things over the years, even though you're just now entering the doctoral degree. So you have a lot of experience in publishing. Is there one paper that you can point to? The reason I ask is because I would like our viewers, our readers, to get to know you and your research. So I'll put a link to whatever paper you tell me in the blog post when I publish this video. So is there a paper or a chapter or something you've written that you would allow me to share with our readers so they get to know you as a scholar?
Yes, I think in the spirit of what we've been discussing, I would single out a paper that's titled Brazil in Comparative Perspective, The Legacy of the Founding and the Future of Constitutional Development. This was published last year in the Journal of Constitutional Research from the state of Paraná here in Brazil. I first started working on this paper as part of a supervised research conducted by Professor Ackerman at Yale. I worked on it for several years since, and it just gives a glimpse at how I view constitutionalism, constitutional history, the future of constitutionalism in Brazil and elsewhere. It's also the first paper that I wrote on this larger themes that I plan to explore in my doctoral dissertation. So I think this really gives a view on how I see constitutional law today.
Oh, wonderful. I know this journal very well. It's published and edited by Danielle Hashem, I think,
Yes.
at the State University of Paraná and also PUC Paraná.
Yes, exactly.
Yes.
The top law journal here in Brazil.
a great law journal. Congratulations on that publication. Thanks for sharing that with us. And moreover, just thanks for spending some time with me today and reconnecting over video and letting me hear and our viewers hear about how you write and what you're researching and what your interests are. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Albert, for your invitation and for this opportunity. I hope this is interesting for the readers of iConnect. I have been a faithful reader of iConnect for many years, so this was a great opportunity for me. Thank you very much.
Well, it's a pleasure for us, an honor for us, and we wish you great success on your next steps at the court and then at the Yale Law School.
Thank you very much.